and smiling is that we have the opportunity to make you more comfortable, living up to our promise to be trustworthy, on time, and keep you worry-free. Keeping you cool when it counts and warm when you need it. Plus, we get to see you.
For a limited time at Service Champions Heating and Air Conditioning, get a comprehensive AC tune-up, plus a free water heater safety inspection for just $88. Call 888-I'm-HAPPY. When you're so...
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful May the 5th, 2021. Bound to the Portes. Bonjour, Big C. CINCO de Mayo. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, a troubling time down in the South. Mitch McConnell saying that 1619, we should not teach our children about that in school, that it wasn't a relevant date in American history, Charlton. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They always care about what dates are relevant.
They always care about what dates are relevant. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon and Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Ready to have a smart TV? Oh, you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love Pause the Big C. I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, maybe we need to get Mitch McConnell to pay as much attention as he needs to our veterans in this country as he does trying to revoke 1619 out of the history of America, Charlton. Our veterans are part of that 1619 genre, Charlton, but unfortunately in this day and era, many of our veterans have turned to suicide because we have senators like Mitch McConnell who do not pay attention to their plight, Charlton, their need for mental, physical, and financial help, and that we're not getting on a daily basis in this country, Charlton, due to COVID-19 and many other ailments. But our veterans are very important, and I wish that our politicians would speak about them daily as much as they want to speak about your best friend, Donald Trump, and maybe pay some attention to the plight of those people who allowed people like him to avoid being a veteran in the military, Charlton, to avoid draft deferments. But our veterans need the help. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need more from Americans to stop suicide in this country.
We will do our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, the first place National League West San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country to help put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you like the sports teams are doing at Big C. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports. to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast, and you'll see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I also want to say to all of my friends, Cinco de Mayo is a Mexican holiday. May 5th marks the Mexican Army's victory over France at the Battle of Puebla during the Franco-Mexican War in 1862. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's amazing that we get a celebration from a country that our Republicans are trying to keep all their members out of from coming to the United States. I think the beer companies benefit the most from Cinco de Mayo, Charlton, because we don't get paid holidays for that in America. It's just like having Taco Bell saying it's a real taco.
Yeah, it's all fair and level word, Big C. You can't please everybody. I learned that a long time ago. All you can do is pay homage to a lot of great people. I want to also start off today, because no one says, not pay homage to women or not pay homage to people who've earned it, or military veterans, Big C. African-American inventions. Be great for the Senator, Ms. McConnell, to understand exploring the NASA universe, Big C. Miss Valerie Thomas patented in 1980, and she invented the first 3D imaging, Big C, that NASA uses today, and they actually use it as they track satellites that are floating around in the universe, Big C. An African-American woman, and the amazing thing about that is no one really thinks about it, how 3D imaging is used by doctors. 3D imaging is used by auto mechanic companies when they want to put an image on a vehicle to see what's wrong with it. 3D imaging is also used in hospitals as they can do a scan of the inside of the brain without opening the scalp. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, according to Mitch McConnell, that invention is not significant in the flight of American history, Charlton. But when we think about the injection and the creation of black history in America and the innovations that they have provided through science in this world and in this country, Charlton, they're unparalleled. It's just unfortunate, unless you Google something, you really don't find out about black ingenuity in America. We don't see it in the daily news cycles, Charlton. We see negativity towards black people, but not the positive output and input that they've had in American society and the world.
Well, that's why God created Big C Sports. Big C. Valerie Thomas is an American scientist and inventor who patented the illusion transmitter in 1980 after seeing an illusion that involved concave mirrors, Big C, and light bulbs in a museum. She became curious about how she might apply a concave mirror in her work at NASA. Isn't that amazing, Big C? Her invention and the illustration transmitter grew out of her experimentation with concave mirrors. You could call it in the early 3D technology. Her invention transmitted an elliptical illusion of a 3D image between concave mirrors that looks real on the receiving end. NASA, Big C, they continue to use her technology this day, and she's also developed real-time computer data systems to support satellite control centers and oversaw the creation of NASA Landsat program that spearheaded some of the first image transmissions from space. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, black women have always been an integral part of NASA. If you go back to the 50s, Charlton, to the Mercury program, it were black women, Charlton, were the reasons why those Mercury astronauts were able to go up and circle the Earth and then be able to re-enter in the perfect spot, Charlton, because of their mathematical calculations.
Yeah.
So when we think about the intelligence and the influence of black women on the astronauts of America and the world, Charlton, they go hidden, just like the movie Hidden Figures. It's amazing how white society always wants to ostracize and hide the accomplishments of black people in America.
And that's why God created Big C Sports, so people could rise and shine. It's all fair and love and more, and I really do appreciate what she's doing. Whenever you have a phone call made, it's transmitted by satellite. Whenever you see something on the television, it's transmitted by satellite. Whenever you see images from outer space, it's transmitted by satellite. And that woman is part of that creation that a lot of people benefit from to this day, Big C. I want to look at the world of the NBA, and some people may not believe it or not, but I disagree with a lot of media. There's a lot of media that thinks that LA Lakers, their chance to repeat as NBA champions, some people think it's over, and that's foolish thinking. How anticlimactic would it be, instead of taking on the world, the great LeBron James and Anthony Davis, head gently into the good night, Big C, instead of defying the odds? the Lakers will spend the coming weeks wondering how they were relegated from favorites to non-contenders, but that depends on who you listen to, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we know that you have a set of purple pom-poms sitting on your nightstand, so we always know that you're a Laker fan. But,
purple and gold, baby.
I just hope you don't go out there in the cheerleader outfit as you go for your walks during the day and draw the wrong people to your backside.
17 championships.
But when you look at the Lakers, I mean, they're no different than any other team when you look at the NBA, Charlton. When you're injury down-ridden, your capacity to compete at the highest level is just not there. And we've seen that with the Lakers over their last 15 games. They have not been a dominant team, Charlton. And when you fall down low in the stature as far as playoff rankings, and we know that 10 teams play themselves in, if you fall down to that 8 or 9 spot, Charlton, that's a long road trying to get to the championship.
Not so fast, my friend, Big C. The road takes some time. You take the road less travel. It might be a little bit longer. But when you think about last year's, it demonstrated the benefits of a roster that included the great LeBron James and Anthony Davis. This season has highlighted the dangers of building a team around these two particular superstars, one of them being 36 years old, the other for other known reasons of being sometimes fragile, Big C. When you look at LeBron James and the Lakers, some people say they're running out of time. Less than 2 weeks remain in the regular season. But here's a team that comes from a proud history of 17 championships, and people can say, yeah, but that's back in the past. Everything you do today was based on what happened in the past, Big C. I think the Lakers, as long as they get into the tournament, they will be fine. I think the Pac-12 showed us that when you had a lot of teams that beat each other up in conference, and they blew out teams that had better records, but they lost by double digits to Pac-12 teams that were more tested, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, from the statement you just made, that makes the Celtics the best team in the East, led by Coach Bradley Stevens. But you got to look at the Lakers and where they are. They benefited from being in the bubble last year, Charlton. They got a lengthy rest going into the bubble, and those old legs got a chance to rejuvenate themselves. You haven't had a bubble this year, and now that you got Laker players with a lot of injuries, especially Davis and James coming down the stretch, Charlton, how will that vote when you don't have the bubble to get that rest and you got to go right into the playoffs and potentially have to play at least 4 series to get to the championship?
And that's why they play the game, Big C. If it was all played out in media, there'd be no need to even have the tip-off. It's all fair and level war. The Lakers will make it into the Western Conference playoffs. And once they get there, it's all fair and level war, Big C. But for the second time, and as far as the Boston Celtics, they have a shooter's chance. I mean, look at college basketball. It's not always the team with the best record that wins. Just like the NBA, you got to earn it on the court, Big C. And I think the Lakers have a lot of experience, as well as the Boston Celtics. But for the second time, in 3 days, you think about the Milwaukee Bucks and talk about having the best record, Big C. They were atop of the mountain in the Eastern Conference the last couple of years. They didn't even get to the finals because they were not playoff tested. So throw out the records and let people play the new. If you think about the Super Bowl champion, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they didn't enter the playoffs with the best record in the NFL, Big C. In fact, they had to go on the road and do their things, but there's something about experience. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks. They defeated the Brooklyn Nets 2 times, Big C, in the last week. And when you happen to look at Tuesday's game, when you think about what they did, Big C, the 2 teams traded leads for the first 3 quarters before Milwaukee took over and finished Brooklyn off in the 4th quarter. Yet again, the great Giannis Antetokounmpo, Big C, the last 2 MVPs, Giannis Antetokounmpo, hasn't seen the NBA Finals, so sometimes the best record doesn't help you when it tries to win a championship. But the great Kevin Durant, they excel with 36 and 32 points, respectively. But the great Kyrie Irving, Dr. Drew, Big C, he was dropping more than all of them. So he had 38 points of his own, yet Milwaukee managed to walk away. And maybe a buck doesn't walk away, kind of gallops away, Big C. They gallops away with the victory thanks to a balanced offensive effort, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is what I've been saying about the Milwaukee Bucks. If they can get some balanced play in their offense, we know what Giannis is going to bring to you, but Middleton has to step up his game every night in the playoffs, Charlton, and that will make a difference for the Bucks. I mean, a few weeks ago, I think you had already written in that the New Jersey Nets is the Eastern champion, but the Bucks said not so fast. We got a few hooks to hang on this one.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets, they may get there too, and that's what I love about the NBA. It doesn't matter what someone's record is. It doesn't matter what anybody says except for the guys on the floor, and that's why you throw out the records when you get into the playoff tournament. The guys with experience, just like a long-distance runner, oftentimes the person that finishes the long-distance runner in the league, unlike the Kentucky Derby, Big C with backwards, the little horses, sometimes they don't start out in first. They just kind of coast, and then they run hard down the stretch. The great Drew Holiday and the great Chris Middleton, Big C, they dropped in 23 points apiece. And strong nights from Dante DiVincenzo, Big C, and the great Brian Forbes. And the Bucks went over the top again. The two teams have now played, when you think about this, Big C, all three of their scheduled regular season matchups. But they're on a collision course for a second round rematch. And when you think about how well these two teams played, I mean, just for this year only, it would be great if the NBA just matched the top seeds against the top seeds. But I know they're going to do East Conference versus Western Conference. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if you go top seeds, then the Lakers are not going to get there because they're not a top seed. But when you think about where you are with Brooklyn and Milwaukee, the way that they're playing, I mean, they have had no answer for Giannis this year in these head-to-head matchups. And you talked about how well Middleton and Holiday, put their 23 points on the record books, Charles. Yep. This is a team when it's balanced. It's the best team in the East when it's balanced. Yeah. But when it's lopsided and you're just depending on Giannis, then it takes everybody else out of the flow. Giannis has to find a way to consistently keep his teammates in the ebb and flow of a ball game, and you're going to get the results like you had against Brooklyn.
Yeah. I want to just have a little caveat, and I know it's about guys who've been there before, like people who've always run a race. They've seen that race. They may have run the Boston Marathon 4 or 5 times. The 4th and 5th time, they do much better than the 1st or 2nd time. I know Kevin Durant is amazing. I mean, he's absolutely phenomenal, Big C. I know Dr. Drew is amazing. The great Kyrie Irving has dribbles like Curly Neal, Big C. But again, Irving never won a championship without King James, who's been there 4 times. And the Durant never won a championship without Steph Curry. In fact, they had a 3-1 lead and came back, and the Golden State came back and got them. I've seen this before, where sometimes even Giannis, you could be the best player maybe in the universe, and no one can tell me that the Joker's better ticket watching than what those two guys did last night. But do you feel that if Durant's going to be the guy they count on, will he revert back to what happened at OKC? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you got to remember when he played in OKC. That was a lifetime ago. Yeah. And when you look at the players that they had on that team, none of them are in OKC any longer. Yeah. And it wasn't all about Kevin Durant when they lost. I mean, if it was about Kevin Durant when they lost in OKC, it was about Kevin Durant when they lost in Oakland when they got beat by the Raptors. So, I mean, if you want to label one player being the go-to guy, win or lose, I mean, how many championships has Kyrie Irving won since he left Cleveland that one year after they won the championship, Charlton? Yeah. And even LeBron James, he's always had to team up with somebody, either Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. He's had to team up with Irving, and he's had to team up with Davis to win a championship. So unless he's had another superstar on his roster, he hasn't won either. So it comes down to who's healthy at that time, Charlton, and who has a hot hand.
Yeah, well, that's the case with every superstar, Big C, but you can't say that any of those players you named off are better than LeBron James in the past or present or at any time during their career.
But it's not about one player being better. It's about a cohesive unit going out, producing together in the same mode. That's what makes a championship team. Show me one player. I mean, and you got a ton of MVPs around the league. But show me that one player when he can walk out on the court 1-on-5 and win a championship.
Yeah, well, his name is Steph Curry, the only unanimous MVP in the NBA.
Could he win a championship? I think twice he lost championships. In his second run for a title in Golden State, and the last time he made it to a championship run in Golden State, he lost those.
But you got to be honest. If your eyes don't deceive you, Big C, the last time when they were in the finals and they lost to a team from Toronto, everybody pulled a hamstring. Klay Thompson had a bad ACL, and then Kevin Durant also that's when he tore his Achilles. You know, Steph was banged up also, Big C, and then
So you missed my question. I said, show me the time that one individual walks out there 1-on-5 and wins the championship. Well, he needs a team around him playing cohesively.
Yeah, that's a bad narrative. There is no such thing as 1-on-5 in the NBA, but you asked me a question about who can dominate, and Steph Curry's dominated every time he's played in the NBA Finals, Big C. I just can't say the same thing about Kyrie Irving. I can't say the same about Kevin Durant because without the Splash Brothers, he still hasn't been to the finals outside of when they got beat by the great LeBron James when OKC, when they fell to Miami. But it's all fair and love and war. That's what I love about the NBA. It's not just one flavor of ice cream. everybody has their own flavor of ice cream, and that's why I love the playoffs. It's not always the best record that wins the NBA championship. You know, word has it, it's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Steph Curry for 3. The great Steph Curry hitting threes all over the place. I was saying last night, not that I know any more than anybody else, but I was saying that the NBA wants to see the Zion Williamson get into the NBA playoffs, and it'd be great if he could. And that's why they won last night, in my opinion. But the great Golden State Warriors guard, Steph Curry, continues to rewrite the NBA history books. And believe it or not, there's still some shooting records that he hasn't broken, Big C. He checked another one off the list on Tuesday, but I was telling you, he's been one of the most consistent players from start to bottom, Big C, top to bottom. I mean, more so than LeBron, more so than Durant, more so than Kyrie Irving, more so than Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a lot more than the Joker, Big C. No pun intended. It's a fact, though, Big C. He checked another one off the list last night. When you think about it, as he became the fastest player to hit 300 three-pointers in a single season in their game against the New Orleans Pelicans that the NBA wanted the Pelicans to win. It took Curry just 58 games to hit 300 on this season, Big C. When you think about that, that's rare territory, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's rare territory, Charlton, but it's also the guy who shoots the most threes in the league. And that's how you get to those records. But, I mean, Steph Curry's been a phenomenal player throughout his history in the NBA.
Yeah.
Everybody's aware of him being a hired assassin from behind the arc, Charlton, and he does it better than no one has ever done it in NBA history.
Yeah.
So he's phenomenal in that capacity. But are those threes and Steph Curry enough to propel the Warriors to being the best team in the NBA at the end of it all?
Probably not, but it's going to help them get in. I mean, they have a lot of people that are just out. I mean, even banged up. The great Draymond Green is right now their second base player, and he's a defensive stopper. But when you think about what the Curry did, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Curry for 3. The great Steph Curry hitting threes all over the place, Big C. So in addition to what he did, 58 games to hit 300 on the season, in addition to that, Mark, the great Steph Curry, he joined the great Ray Allen, Jesus Soderworth, and he got game, who had 2,973 as the only player in NBA history to hit 2,800 career three-pointers. At this point, Big C, it's only a matter of time until Steph Curry passes the great Ray Allen to become the NBA's all-time leader in three-point baskets made. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's going to do that. It's inevitable. I mean, he's a pleasure to watch when you sit back and watch a basketball game, Charlton. The Warriors were must-see television for 5 years running in the NBA. I mean, it was like watching an NFL game.
Yeah.
You knew what you were going to be doing when they had television time out there in the Bay Area, Charlton. So, I mean, he's become the most dynamic player in the NBA. I mean, LeBron's the most dominant. Curry's the most dynamic.
Yeah, and I think those are, again, we talk about a history of seeing players like Michael Jordan, Clyde the Glide Drexler, Big C. I remember they had a guy by the name of Jamal Smooth and Silk Wilkes for the LA Lakers back in the day. We've seen the great Allen Iverson do his thing, Dr. J, so many great people, Big C, Irvin Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Everybody can call them off, whoever they want to crown them, Big C. But you got to crown the great Steph Curry, the two-time MVP, and the only unanimous MVP of the league has been on an absolute tear this season. And he's almost single-handedly rolled the Warriors into the playoff picture in the Western Conference. Now, I know he was the only unanimous MVP player in the universe. But I love what he's doing, especially I love his last name, Big C. But when it's just like I feel like sometimes Wilt Chamberlain did not get enough credit back in the day and also today. Sometimes he's more talked about what he allegedly did outside of the court, but when you look at anyone breaking numbers, 100 points in a game, the guy averaged 55 points a game, the great Wilt Chamberlain, without a three-point basket. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, a lot of people are like yourself. You're fans of the game and don't always sit down and break down the idiosyncrasies of the game, which is what's the most important part. Anybody can go out and score, and you can put points on the scoreboard. But do you make your team better by your attributes? That is the key element when you're looking at the dominant players in today's game and yesterday's game. How do you make your teammates respond? We all talk about superstar characteristics of individuals, but does that team parallel that also? That is the most important part of team sports. When you're out there as an individual, yes, you can go out and dominate on the tennis circuit, Charlton, because you're that individual. But when you're in a team sport, how do you make those surrounding members of that cast better? They can go out and be good without you even having a great game because of what you do throughout that contest. When you talk about somebody like Russell Westbrook, a team, when he's playing on, he gets a triple-double, they have a 75% chance of winning. That's what you call greatness. That's making everybody around you better and getting involved. And yet Russell Westbrook does not get the accolades of other players because he's just Russell Westbrook, so he doesn't have that superstar label on his name at all times. But he is, as far as being productivity for the other four guys on the court, nobody really in the NBA is better than Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, well, as far as being a fan, no one can be a fan of ice cream if they've never tasted the ice cream. Big C, it's not a bad thing to be a fan of something that you love so much. When you think about Russell Westbrook, in the middle of one of the best stretches of his career, over his last 29 games, he's averaged 23.2 points, 13.2 rebounds, and 12.7 assists per game to help carry the Washington Wizards back into the playoff contention. Now, when you think about what he's done out of Lucinger High School in Southern California, just between Long Beach and downtown Los Angeles, he averaged 24 triple-doubles in that span alone. More than that, think about it. All but 21 players in the NBA history have done that their entire careers. And when you think about it, 30 to 35, the Wizards are now comfortably, if they're right now, I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs. They'll probably get bounced after maybe the first round or so. But they're going to get in, maybe they're going to get in the way things are now, maybe even a 10 seed as a result. But if you could just find an army of guys that played as hard as Russell Westbrook, there would be no doubt that you would have a couple of championships, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, I mean, you look at him getting into the playoffs this year. I understand he got in with James Harden, but I think right now he has the best backcourt mate that he's ever had in Bradley Beal. You have a guy who's contending for the NBA scoring lead in Bradley Beal. So when you think about Russell Westbrook, he has made adjustments in his game. Rudy Hachimura is playing outstanding as a rookie. So he's hungry also.
Yeah.
But when you think about where the Wizards have gone to this year, they're going to make it into the playoffs. This is no man land for them because it's been a long time for this franchise to be able to go out there and play in what's known as the off season.
Yeah.
So when they get into the playoffs and the way he's playing, think about it. When he's averaging a triple-double, they win 3/4 of their game.
Yeah.
And the last I checked, in a 7-game series, Charlton, that means that you're going to win 4-2.
Yep.
So if you look at that, Russell Westbrook, ironically, has a chance to make some waves in the playoffs along with the rest of his Wizards teammates.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. It's not about having the best record. It's about having the best shooters when you get into a playoff series. So don't worry about records. Just focus on what happens on the court. And when you think about the great Westbrook, he plays like he's eating the Big C burger. I know it's a tasty burger. I know it comes with exotic meats. And that's how he plays, like he's eating the Big C burger, Big C. Now, he's publicly grumbled about the lack of credit that he's received for his recent stretch. But other times he'll say he doesn't care about the media. But he's telling reporters that he's pretty sure if everybody could do it, that they would do it. And I agree with him. But Westbrook's longtime coach, the great Scotty Brooks, he went above and beyond giving his point guard the praise that others haven't done, Big C, because sometimes their eyes are not open wide enough. He used to always say he's going to probably go down as the third best point guard ever, but I think he's past that one, and he's going to go down as probably the second one. When you think about it, one is obviously the great Irvin Magic Johnson, and when he does, there's no other point guard that has ever done it. No matter what you see with his numbers, I just love seeing his effort, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, nobody's duplicated what he has done in his career that he's had, Charlton, playing with 3 different NBA franchises. He's brought in consistency to each one of those franchises. He's a former MVP, Charlton, but to have 3 seasons where you've averaged a triple-double for the entire season in the NBA, that lets you know that you keep everybody on your team involved in those scenarios, Charlton. So when you talk about leadership, this is a guy. If this is one of those other superstars around the league, say if it was Kyrie Irving averaging a triple-double, think about how he would be talked about throughout the annals of sports in the league. Even LeBron James, if he was in that neighborhood, Charlton, how he would be looked at.
Yeah.
And James Harden is really the only guy, a former teammate of Westbrook's twice, to be close to that in comparison in the NBA.
Yep, that's very well said, Big C. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause. also known as a Big C timeout. And when we come back, I want to talk more about what's going on with maybe a player that you consider on your list for an MVP. I think he's not, but everybody has their own opinion. We'll take what's called the Big C pause. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow, and I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, play Big C Sports Podcast. You can always find it when you open your phone and just say play Big C Sports Podcast the way God said, let there be light. I also want to thank Thomas Drysdale and his affiliation with boxing great Lennox Lewis following Big C Sports. It's all fair and level more. Big C, I want to touch on in the NBA, the 2020-2021 NBA regular season is nearing an end. And then your friend, that somehow I think you've been sharing his chicken nuggets, Big C, because in my mind, he's not the MVP any more than the MVP should have not been Shaquille O'Neal when they gave it to somebody down in Phoenix. Not to knock anybody, but that's just my opinion. But Jokic, he's a front runner in some people's eyes, the NBA's most prestigious individual award, most valuable player, and no one can really pick him out and say he's the MVP of the NBA. That's just my opinion, but I'm not knocking the guy. He's a great player. Now, Jokic, he's a consensus leader among some media members, but among some media members, they were always in favor of other horses other than the average horse winning the Kentucky Derby. That didn't happen, Big C. It's all fair level war. When you think about it, in my opinion, you got guys like the great Joel Embiid, the great Chris Paul, the great Giannis Antetokounmpo as the favorite, and I think Steph Curry. If the Jokic were to win the award, he would be the first center to do so since the great Shaquille O'Neal, who also got robbed twice of the MVP back in 2000, was one of those years, and the Nuggets were able to win it all. If he can, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, I understand your complaints about him being considered the MVP of the league. But you also got different awards that you pass out. You got an award for Defensive Player of the Year. You got an award for the scoring champ. You got an award for the assist champ, Charlton. So all those individual accolades can be given out for what some other player does.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the complete game, that's what the most valuable player is. How do you lift up your teammates throughout the season? That's what the most valuable player is. When you look at Jokic statistically, find another stat line that's better than his in the NBA. It might be Russell Westbrook, and no one even puts him in the MVP consideration. I think number 2 on that list when it comes to MVP, you have to look at Chris Paul. I go Jokic 1, Chris
good.
Paul 2, because look at the Phoenix Suns a year ago. Look how bad that team was, Charlton, and look at where they are right now in the Western Division. Look at the OKC Thunder. Look at where they were last year. They were in the playoffs. Look at where they are now. They're the worst team in the Western Division.
Yeah.
Look at where the Houston Rockets are, Charlton, 3 years ago, before he pulled a hamstring. They were one game away from knocking out the Warriors. That's how good they were. So when you think about Chris Paul, the Los Angeles Lakers were not, the Clippers were not relevant when he left that organization, Charlton. So when you talk about 2 players who've made the most impact in the NBA this year, that has been number 1, Nikola Jokic, because his numbers have been so consistent over the past 5 years, people have overlooked it. LeBron James hasn't won an MVP since 2014, if you want to put his name in the mix. But hell, he's been so hurt the last 2 out of the last 3 years, he can't even get into the hunt. And he still might be the best player in the league. So Jokic, based on his numbers and what he has done in Denver, is the front runner right now for the MVP, with Chris Paul being second.
Well, I hope when he buys those chicken nuggets that he at least shares them with you, Big C. He's not the MVP, but everybody has their own opinion, Big C. When you think about the NBA's most improved player race, that's a race that a lot of guys talk about. The field for the NBA's most improved player award is a crowded one, Big C, this season, as the number of players from across the league in the NBA landscape have taken their game to a higher notch in the universe. It's all fair and level, where for some players The improvement is the result of a fresh start on a new team. For others, it simply stems from getting more minutes on the same floor with the same squad. Either way, all the guys, I'm going to give you a list and get your thoughts on it. They have stepped up in a major way this season. I want to talk about some of the 5 candidates that are up for the Big C's NBA's Most Improved Player Award for 2020 and 21 season. But I want to ask you an honest question. Was Steve Nash really a better player for the NBA than Shaquille O'Neal when he got stolen 2 awards? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can look at Shaquille O'Neal hanging out down in Orlando, Charlton. Did anybody consider him the MVP of the league when he was in Orlando? And yet his numbers were identical to what they were when he was with the Lakers. But yet when he was in Los Angeles and he had more TV time, Charlton, it gave him a bigger format. So did that make him the MVP, or did television showcase him more?
Yeah, I think if you ask any player, you're probably the only one that said that Nash was a better player than Shaq. It's all fair.
How many times have you seen Jokic on television this year?
I've seen him maybe twice. That's a good point, because I did.
How many times have you seen Zion Williams on TV this year?
Maybe 3 or 4 times. But I want to ask.
Is he a better player than Jokic?
I want to ask you a question. I saw the Jokic against the LA Lakers down at Staples Center, and I saw a guy with a bad foot in Anthony Davis and a couple of other guys that were scragglers. They didn't have Shooter. They didn't have the great King James. And I saw Jokic get a hat, Big C. I saw Jokic come into the LA city limits, the Staples Center, and a guy that's imposing as an imposter of an MVP couldn't even beat a team where they had handicapped planks on the outside of Staples Center. Big C, your thoughts?
Who's ranked higher in the Western Division? Is it Denver or the Lakers?
I'm telling you what I saw.
But no, I'm just asking you a simple question. Who's ranked higher in the Western Division?
If you're doing the rankings, it doesn't matter, Big C. I'm telling you what I saw.
But it's a team game, didn't you say? So you're saying that Jokic by himself was the only player playing against the Lakers that night, and he had an average game that night, and his teammates didn't pull their muscle.
What I'm saying, don't blame it on the teammates. You want to give him the MVP. What I'm telling you, what I saw with my own 2 eyes, which is how most people judge things. What I saw with my own 2 eyes, he came into the LA City Staples Center, and he had Anthony Davis with a bad foot. There was no King James. There was no Schroeder, and people were expecting the Joker to come in there and dominate. And he beat a team that had a lot of guys with handicap stickers in their parking spaces. You cannot tell me, if you believe your eyes, and maybe you don't, that that's an MVP. That's just my opinion.
What was Joker's stat line that night?
That Big C, they lost. That was the stat line.
No, but see, that's my point. You only look at the fringe part of it. You can't go in and do a total analysis. That's why I'm asking you, what was his stat line? Was his stat line consistent to what he had done all year long? His individual stat line. I understand the differential in the score. So what you're saying last night is that Giannis Antetokounmpo won the MVP because he dominated the net in back-to-back games.
I'm telling you what I said with my own 2 eyes, Big C. I saw your favorite. I saw the Joker come into L.A., and he played a team that was handicapped. They had a handicapped placards on all their parking stalls. And he beat a guy. I mean, he couldn't beat them. And he's the MVP. Give me a break, Big C. At some point in time, you got to win a game. Of course, you can shoot more if you have nobody else on your team. But when you can't beat a handicapped L.A. Lakers squad, Big C, don't tell me he's your MVP. But you can if you want to. That's still your opinion. It's all fair and level work.
We'll wait till the trophy's handed out.
It's all fair and level work. In fact, Jokic did see a championship ring. He saw one from a player that played for the Lakers last year. It's all fair and level work. They let him touch the ring, Big C. But I want to get back to this year's, if you look at 5 top candidates for the NBA's Most Improved Player Award in 2020, Big C. Julius Randle, he's been doing his thing. He's been very productive in the league for several reasons now, Big C. But he's also blossomed into an all-star with the New York Knicks during the current campaign. Now, Randle, he's up his major league counting stats, Big C, this season. He's averaging a career-high 24.2 points, 10.3 rebounds, 5.9 assists, and 1 steal per game. And he's really the reason, in my opinion, that the New York Knicks are one of the best teams now in the Eastern Conference. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, he and his sidekick, R.J. Barrett, Charlton, have made tremendous strides along with Derrick Rose and Tom Thibodeau, the head coach. I mean, he has to be up for Coach of the Year this year. But when you think about Randle and his growth this season in the NBA, Charlton, after leaving the New Orleans Pelicans, and also departing from the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
He could be in MVP consideration, but when you look at what he's done on the biggest stage in Madison Square Garden, where they have the Knicks in the playoffs for the first time in almost a decade, Charlton,
Yep.
a lot of weight has been on Julius Randle's shoulders, and he's been able to lift it all.
Yeah. And you know what, Big C? When the great Patrick Ewing, he was complaining, that stunt they pulled. They won't let me into Madison Square Garden. That was all a stunt with the NCAA coming up in Georgetown, and also the Big East tournament was back there. And the great Patrick, if he can't get in, nobody can get in, Big C. But that gave a lot more attention to the New York Knicks. That was a great publicity stunt by the great Patrick Ewing, Big C. When you look at another player, and it's just my opinion, the great Rocket center, Christian Wood, Big C, they have a horrible team down in Texas. But Wood shows flashes of his potential, Big C, while serving primarily as a bench player with a big guy with the Detroit Pistons last season. He's averaging only 13.1 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 1 assist in 21.4 minutes of action per game. But he started just 12 of the 62 games that he played for Detroit last year, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this was a team that didn't want Quick Capella. They shipped him off to Atlanta. And Quick Capella is thriving in Atlanta. But when you look at Woods and how he stepped out of the shadows down in Houston and showed that a big man is always going to be relevant down there, Charlton.
Yeah.
I think about big men that they've had in the past down there. When they had Akeem Olajuwon, Ralph Sampson, and those big men,
Yep.
Charlton. And now Woods wants to live in that limelight.
Yeah, he's living in that timeline, Big C. It's all fair and love and war. And then I want to take you to a player that many people may not think about. But, this is my opinion. You think about Jeremy Grant, and I'm telling you about the Joker, right? He's not the MVP. Jeremy Grant has played a lot of different roles over the course of his career. Grant tracked 10 points into his scoring average. He tacked it on. Maybe Anthony Davis can pay attention and start going down where you can get an extra 10 points a game. That's down in the paint. That's just my opinion. But Grant's tacked on 10 points into his scoring average, which jumped from 12 points per game for the Nuggets last season to 22.5 points in Detroit, Big C. They didn't give him the ball a lot in Denver because they were trying to build up the Joker, who's not the MVP, even though some people may vote for him. But when you look at Grant, similarly, his assists per game average, Big C, it jumped from 1.2 to 2.8, Big C. On the career night, Grant, one of the main areas where Grant has improved is creating offense for himself, Big C. Your thoughts?
Think about who he learned from, Charlton, having to practice every day against the Joker there in Denver for a couple years. And now that he's gone out and gotten his own team in Detroit, he's able to take those exploits that he learned behind Nikolai Jokic, Charlton, and put them on the court for himself. That meant that he wasn't as good as Nikolai Jokic, but having an opportunity, he could be almost as good if he had his own team to showcase on, Charlton, and that's what he's done in Detroit.
Nah, a lot of guys do what Odell Beckham Jr. do. They say, give me the ball, I'm the best on the court. And if the team's going to fall for it, they will. But guys can get away from that, and they flourish. That's a clue, Big C. The Nuggets also have high hopes when they selected the great Michael Porter Jr. with the number 14 pick in the 2018 NBA draft. And he's quickly turning into the player that they thought he could be, Big C. They just got to get on the ball more. Porter Jr. has doubled his scoring average this season from 9.3 to 18.9 points per game. When you think about that, the Joker hasn't doubled his points per game from last year, Big C. And when you think about it, he's snagging nearly 3 more rebounds per game this season at 7.5 compared to 4.7 last season. Last season, he shot 50% from overall, from 42% from deep. In this season, he's shooting about 54% from the field and 44 from three-point range. Jokic hasn't doubled his point total from last year. Big C, your thoughts?
But Jokic is averaging 10 points more a game than what Porter is, Charlton, as well as more rebounds and assists per game. He is the reason why the Nuggets are as good as they are. Porter has benefited also from Murray being out, having to pick up that secondary role on the roster. He was the third wheel in the Denver Cards, Charlton. But when you're the number 1 draft pick of a team, they expect this type of productivity out of you, Charlton. And finally, in his third season, he's delivering.
Yeah. It's all fair and love and war. You got to play with the people that bring you to the dance, and that's why I love NBA basketball. It's all fair and love and war down to the last dribble, Big C. Another player, people may not think about it, but Chris Brewster, Big C, he rose from relative anonymity to become a legitimate piece in the Toronto Raptors this season. He went undrafted in 2017. Think about that. He was undrafted, but he continued to work on his game this season. He's received a consistent opportunity to show that he can do his thing, Big C. He's playing 24 minutes per game, for the Raptors this season compared to 13.2 last year. He's averaging 13.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, Big C, and 1.9 blocks, as well as 1.1 assists. Those are all career highs for him. And again, he was undrafted, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, just like in the case with Michael Porter, Charlton, when your playing time doubles, then your point production should double.
Yeah.
When you think about the Toronto Raptors, Charlton, they've had 3 players on their roster this year that were not drafted. And so that's been a consistent with them. When I think about Van Fleet on the Toronto Raptors, Charlton, he's the highest paid free agent in NBA history for a player who has not been drafted.
Yeah.
So this is a franchise that's been accustomed to going out finding diamonds in the rough, Charlton,
Yep.
and honing them into great NBA talent.
Yeah, they really have, and I know everybody has. Again, it's a different type of. There was a show back in the day, a Cosby Show spinoff called A Different World. Everything changed with the COVID, and I just love acknowledging some of the players that are just stepping up their game. It's all fair and level. Where I want to run down Big C's NBA schedule for Cinco de Mayo, Wednesday, May 5th, Big C in the sports universe. The great Boston Celtics at Orlando, Portland's at Cleveland, Phoenix, Big C, they're at Atlanta, and maybe they just at what temperature do you turn up the heat to cook a Falcon, Big C?
Well, I mean, when you look at the Phoenix Suns, I mean, you got to look at Chris Paul. He's been playing outstanding. I know that Devin Booker will get a lot of the notoriety, but Devin Booker was just a so-so player until Chris Paul showed up.
Yeah, everybody is so-so until Chris Paul shows up. The Sacramento Kings at Indiana. The Philadelphia 76ers, they're at Houston, Big C. Games are already underway. Washington is at Milwaukee. Now, Milwaukee may be a little bit exhausted based on a very maybe Eastern Conference Finals type of performance against the Brooklyn Nets. You give Washington with Beal and Westbrook any chance against bringing home that buck for dinner, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, I look at the Milwaukee Bucks right now, Charlton, just like I think about the singing group McFadden and Whitehead out of Philadelphia. Ain't no stopping us now.
Ain't no stopping us now. It's all fair and love, Big C. Memphis at Minnesota. And then a game that I know you're interested in. Will you have apples for dessert or will you have chicken nuggets, Big C? The New York Knicks at the Denver Nuggets, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you got 2 great combatants when you look at Randall and you look at Jokic, Charlton. Michael Porter is going to have to make a difference in this game. It's going to be between him and R.J. Barrett.
Yeah, it should be great action tonight up in Denver. And any wisdom for the players coming from New York, bring your own cigars if that makes sense to you. Don't let the Buddha Boys give you something at Mile High City. San Antonio at Utah. Can Utah hang on to what was once a convincing lead in the Western Conference? In fact, the whole NBA, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, when we look at the playoffs, Charlton, it's going to be some 7-game series. And when you get yourself solidified where you're going to be in the second spot in the West, you can just coast, Charlton, and save some players.
Yep, save some players. It's all fair and love and war. Big C's NBA Wednesday night schedule on Cinco de Mayo. We really appreciate our brethren from Cinco de Mayo, Big C. It's the pitch. Hit deep. Right field. Back to the wall. Home run. When you think about the home run, man, the Dodgers leaking a little bit of oil out the Chavez Ravine, Big C. In fact, their ace pitcher, the great Clayton Kershaw, lasted just 1 inning in the shortest start of his stellar career, while the great Kyle Hendricks pitched a complete game for the Chicago Cubs in a 7-1 win over the Dodgers on Tuesday, Big C, in the opener of a split doubleheader, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Charlton, that you had already written in the Dodgers as being the World Series champ, that they had the best team in the history of baseball. But you said leaking oil, they've blown a gasket.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can get those oil gaskets fixed, Big C. It's all fair level war. They will be back in the swing of things, but they got to keep everybody healthy. When you think about exactly 11 years ago, Big C, he was just 1 1/3 innings against Milwaukee, and what was his shortest start, now the great Clayton Kershaw, he's 4-3, did not last long in this one. It's like everything with every team. You got to stay healthy, and sometimes you don't. But you got to have guys come in off the bench and do their part, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you just said about the Lakers that you could take a handicapped team out there and beat the second or third best team in the West in basketball. But now you're saying with the Dodgers, they got an excuse.
No, not an excuse. If you saw with your own 2 eyes, you got to watch games with your eyes open. The Lakers beat your favorite team, the Denver Nuggets, Big C, with your favorite.
No, I didn't say they were my favorite team. I said Nikolai Jokic will win the NBA MVP.
Well, okay.
You can give players awards, Charlton, for being the scoring champ, the rebound champ, the assist champ. All these other individual awards, they give them out. You can give an NBA championship MVP trophy, Charlton. But when it comes down to the regular season MVP, Nikolai Jokic has proved that he deserves that.
And I hope that he shares those chicken nuggets with you. He doesn't deserve it, but he might get it. It's all fair and love and war. When you think about baseball and who's deserving, the great Brandon Belt hit a Gordhead single and the grand slam in a 10-run first inning, and that propelled the San Francisco Giants, home of the Say Kid, over the Colorado Rockies 12-4 on Tuesday night in a doubleheader opener, Big C. The great Brandon Belt connected for a home run. It was the sixth pitch after Hills Conceon, Big C. He's the reliever. He's the starter for Romain Marquez, a 452 drive, Big C, for his third career grand slam. And the great Posey also went deep 4 pitches later, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you had given all the accolades out in California, those two teams down in Southern California, I believe the Dodgers and the Padres.
Yep.
And little did you know the team right there in your backyard would be slipping in the first place.
No, if you listen to my first show, I said the Dodgers are going to be challenged by the Padres, but also the San Francisco Giants are going to be right there in the thick of things. If you go back to the show when we did our baseball previews, all fair and love and war, Big C, and I happen to be pretty correct on that. Also, Major League Baseball, now when you think about it, down in your neck of the woods, the Braves may not have the next Shohei Ohtani on their hands, but for one night, only for one night, the great Luther Vandross, Big C, all fair and love and war, but only for one night, high scorer Noah Big C outdid the Major's most potent two-way threat. He hit a grand slam and pitched 7 stress-free innings. I don't know if it's stress-free, leading the Atlanta Braves to a 6-1 victory over the Washington Nationals on Tuesday night. In the words of the great Luther Vandross, if only for one night. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, these are 2 of the 3 teams that's going to be challenging for the Eastern Conference title, Charlton, in the National League. When you think about the Braves, they've been there the last 2 years. They've gotten some upstarts down in Philadelphia, but Washington won the World Series just 3 short seasons ago, and they're looking to get back there to the Holy Grail.
Yeah, they're trying to get back to the Holy Grail, Big C. The White Sox right-hander Dylan Cease, Big C, hadn't faced live pitching since his senior year in high school. And then he went out and swung the bat like a Hall of Famer on Tuesday night. He threw a one-hit ball for 6 innings, Big C, and struck out 11 and amazingly got 3 hits in his first pro plate appearance as the Chicago routed the Cincinnati Reds by the score of 9-0, Big C. Your thoughts?
You think about the Cincinnati Reds leading the major leagues in home runs, being shut out by the White Sox, Charlton. Tony La Russa's, put down that beer can and found a little magic out there on the mound this year with the White Sox.
Yeah. Hey, leave Tony La Russa and his beer cans alone. You know he's one of those whiskey drinkers, Big C. Is all fair and love and war, Big C. Major League Baseball, the great Cole Irvin. He stepped into Oakland's rotation. When the experienced starter Mike Fiers, Big C, went down, determined to prove that he could more than handle such responsibility. He pitched a pair of no-hitters after all, with another impressive outing. When you think about the Oakland A's and the Bay Area is doing his thing when it comes to Major League Baseball, 4-1, 4-1 win against Toronto. Irvin, he keeps showing that he's far more than a mere fill-in. Mitch Moreland hit a 2-run homer on the heels of Jarrett Lowry's 2-run double in the second back to give Irvin a gem. I'm telling you that something happened about the water in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area. A lot of good sports being played out here, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's amazing year in and year out what Billy Bean can do with change for $1. When you think about the Oakland A's lineup, Charlton, the most economical lineup in the major leagues year in and year out.
Yep.
But last year he got him into the playoffs, and he seems to be on that hunt trail once again, Charlton, getting an underpaid roster into the major league playoffs.
Maybe that's what it is. The guys are still hungry, Big C. They're so hungry they could eat the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats, and it goes great when you're hungry. It's all fair and love and war. I want to go Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is Wednesday, May 5th. The Major League Baseball schedule, Big C, starts the Chicago White Sox, Big C. They're at Cincinnati. San Francisco, the National League West leading San Francisco Giants at Colorado Rockies. Baltimore is at Seattle. The New York Mets, who fire everybody except for the guys that strike out at the plate, Big C. They're playing St. Louis in a doubleheader. Arizona, Diamondbacks in Florida, the Marlins. All they got to do is look out for moccasins, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, when you look at the Marlins, this is the team on the East Coast that's similar to the A's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
This is a team that's been shuttled as far as great talent. They had one of the best rosters in the major leagues just a couple of short seasons ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
And now they're hanging on by a thread.
They're hanging on by a thread or hanging on by a fin, if that makes sense to you, Big C. The Atlanta Braves at Washington. In Houston, why is everybody so mad at Houston? They're at the New York Yankees, Big C, and people want to boo. You want to boo them? Boo them. You can boo anybody you want to. But there's some good old boys. You got to know they're from Texas. In Texas, you're taught if you're not cheating, then you're not trying, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, the fans had a lot of cheerful words for the Astros last night, and mainly Altuve. You know, they only used 2 words for him all night long, and the best one started with Altuve, the other one started with an F.
Hey, they should throw some of those fans out. You have a right to cheer. You don't have the right to come and use profanity in a Major League ballpark. The kids are watching this all fair level war, Big C. Detroit at Boston. The LA Dodgers at Chicago. Take me out to the ball game. The late, great Harry Carey, Big C. The Dallas is great, and you have a great ballpark in Arlington, but they're out of town at the Minnesota Twins, the Texas Rangers. You have Cleveland at Kansas City, Pittsburgh at San Diego. Tatis might hit a home run, Big C. Tampa Bay at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And then you have those birds. The Blue Jays are at the Oakland A's. I found there's some Blue Jays in my backyard, Big C. I've been taking them cheese puffs because there's a bird's nest in my backyard. I take out about a handful of cheese puffs every night to my backyard for the Blue Jays. Would you believe in about 10 minutes, all those cheese puffs are gone, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, hey, everybody's looking for a free meal, Charlton, and now you got some freeloaders hanging out at your place.
Yeah, I love birds. I told them it's not Big C's place. They can trust their little chickies. I'm not going to put them on the grill, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on the world of ice. I know you like ice in your moonshine, Big C. Anders Bjork, he scored Buffalo in the NHL the last 2 goals in regulation, and then had the deciding shootout goal, lifting the Sabres to a 4-3 victory over the New York Islanders on Tuesday. There's a lot of good sports happening in New York for a change, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, hockey's unique in that aspect that they go into overtime, and they've always done it. It's something that's been adapted by football. Basketball has had overtime, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to the shootout, one-on-one, you and the goalie, Charlton. Yeah. And this is where we see some of the most spectacular plays in hockey when you think about the defense that a goalie can put up.
Yeah, the defense the goalie can put up. It's all fan level war, Big C. And then Nicole Ekin also scored the last place Sabres, who rallied past the playoff-bound Islanders for the second straight night as Victor Olofsson had 2 assists. Could you imagine of the teams in New York that are going to be playoff-bound? Of course, the Yankees may get there. I don't know about the Mets, Big C. And then the Islanders are going to get there. I can't say that the Jets or the Giants will, but you know the Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets are going to be there. Isn't it amazing that the favorite sport in the country is football, and their 2 major football teams may be the only ones not looking at playoffs? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, New York is just a mecca when you think about talent. When you look at the Rangers, you look at the Islanders, they're in New York in hockey, Charlton. You look at the Nets and the Knicks, teams that are upstanding this year in the NBA and going to make waves in the Eastern Conference. The Jets and the Giants are always relevant with their fans. They will always have a sellout when you can't get one in California.
Yeah, hey, there's a lot. Like I said, you got to open your eyes, Big C. You can't watch a game and fall asleep in that leaky boy chair.
Those cutouts don't count as real people, though.
It's all fair level work. You still got to open your eyes. There's a lot good happening in California. Pavel Zacharow, Big C, scored the second goal of the game, the 2:42 of overtime as the New Jersey Devils. They snapped Boston Bruins' 4-game winning streak with a 4-3 victory on Tuesday night. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is what hockey is, as we're ending the playoff chase, Charlton, just like in the NBA. We're seeing some great hockey and playoff hockey that's on the horizon, Charlton. When you go to these overtime games and all is on the line, just that one shot decides it all.
That one shot decides it all. Jasper Boquist, Big C, and Yegor Shanovich scored for the New Jersey Big C. It was they finished his home season with a 7-win, 18-loss, and 3-ties record. Mackenzie Blackwood had 33 saves in winning his 4th straight game. 33 is a lot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they being hot on the puck, Charlton, he was able to ward off all those shots that came in his direction.
Yeah, it's all fair. at Leavenworth World. We were just talking about how great the world of football is in the NFL. They had 160,000 fans at the NFL draft, a 3-day event off the lake in Cleveland, Big C, all fair in Leavenworth. Now the NFL, they're offering free Super Bowl 56 tickets to fans who have been vaccinated for the COVID-19, Big C, as part of a global event to encourage getting vaccinations. And I think that's a great thing. They're going to be working with White House COVID response team and global citizens. The Super Bowl promotion is asking fans to share why they got vaccinated or soon will do so, and details on how to win a pair of Super Bowl tickets will be announced Saturday during the Global Citizen Vax Live event, Big C. That's good that the president's also getting involved with the sports universe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is sports and politics, Charlton, being involved with each other. When we think about your friend who was the previous president and how he looked at sports, Charlton, he wanted to get rid of all the African Americans involved in the game, ship them out to Africa or someplace like that,
Yeah.
Charlton. But as we look at our current president, the real president, Joe Biden, Charlton, who understands that sports, politics, and science are synonymous with each other, they're rewarding the greatest fans in the world, the NFL fans, Charlton, for doing the right thing, getting vaccinated for COVID-19, setting an example for the rest of America and the world that this vaccine is the right thing to do.
Yep.
And that the quicker that you get vaccinated, the quicker that America can get back to some resemblance of normalcy.
Yeah, it's a reason you don't see people running around with measles or polio, because they got vaccinated. It's all fair and level war, as some people still don't believe in that. The concert's going to reunite the world program. The event brings together artists, entertainers, and world leaders, including President Joe Biden, to support vaccine equity. And I really appreciate everybody, doctors and sciences, and everybody that's doing their part to go out and make sure we have a safe world to live in. And I know a lot of people get their children vaccinated when they're born, and hopefully that will see the world come back to a new sense of normalcy soon, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what we're striding for as a country. I know a lot of states are going to be opening up, lifting all COVID-19 restrictions, but still enough people have not been vaccinated. Think about yourself, think about your neighbors, think about your family. It's very important that we all go out. It's just like when we talk about the National Suicide Hotline, Charlton, when we open up our show every day. They need to have, we have national COVID-19 hotlines, Charlton, that you can call in and make an appointment. And don't be afraid. I've taken the vaccine. It's great. There's no pain involved. There's no discomfort involved, Charlton. It's the same thing to do as an American citizen, as a citizen of the world.
Yeah, it's all fair and level war. People got to do what they feel is best for them, and science is oftentimes best for a lot of people. You don't have to wait and hope and pray. You can do that too, but science is always great when you rise and shine, Big C. Happy Cinco de Mayo to all of our Mexican friends, Big C, holiday. And so why does the United States celebrate it? Because it's the right thing to do, Big C. As far as your friend Mitch McConnell, nobody says let's not talk about remembering the Holocaust, because it was a horrible event that happened to humanity. But slavery lasted a lot longer than the Holocaust lasted, and some people want to pretend they close their eyes to it, Big C. I never want to close my eyes, because hopefully we can bring light on it so that we don't have to deal with that garbage again. Everybody's loving the NBA basketball. You got to fight for your right to party into the NBA playoffs, and of course baseball swinging the bat. But football is still the king of the block. It's all fair and level war. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, there was an outstanding game in Major League Baseball today up in Baltimore at Camden Yards, Charlton, where the pitcher, threw a complete game. He missed it by one pitch, Charlton, on a perfect game. He threw a strike. The batter was out, and the catcher let it be a pass ball.
Yep.
Otherwise, it would have been a perfect game. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're always perfect every day, Charlton.
Always perfect every day. When they rise and shine, you can rise and shine too. No matter what you're going through, always rise and shine. You can rise and shine every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.